Are you wondering what's happened to nonprofits and charity organizations in Oregon in the last 2 years? We have someone who can give us some answers at Smart Money. Welcome to Smart Money. I'm Julia Anderson here with my co-host Pat Boyle, and we have a special guest with us today, Kirsten Saladow, who's with the Oregon Nonprofit Association. And I didn't get those words in the right order, Kirsten, I apologize. But I'd really like to have you explain, first of all, what your organization does.
Sure. The Nonprofit Association of Oregon, or NAO, as it's also known as, is the statewide nonprofit membership organization that represents and supports charitable nonprofits of all sizes, locations, and missions across Oregon. And our mission is to serve public benefit nonprofits by strengthening their collective voice, leadership, and capacity to enrich the lives of all Oregonians.
Now, the last time we talked to somebody from your organization was before COVID hit. How has the pandemic affected giving to the nonprofits?
Well, charitable giving has been affected in multiple ways. It's not surprising to me that Oregonians have continued to want to be generous and give to nonprofits in their communities throughout the pandemic over the last couple of years. We've also seen an increase in donations to hunger, health, education, and social justice-based organizations across the state. Donations have remained flat to arts and faith-based organizations. So while they didn't increase in those sectors, they also didn't decrease. So the good news is they stayed where they were pre-pandemic levels. And additionally, foundations have been incredibly generous to many nonprofits, and were able to give additional grants in 2020 and 2021 to those doing great work in their communities. The Ford Family Foundation, MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust, Collins Foundation, Meyer Memorial Trust, Oregon Community Foundation are among those who have been giving generously to nonprofits throughout the pandemic.
More generous than the average in terms of per capita giving, which is a real plus. I'm really glad to hear that you haven't seen a decline in giving because people either are off the job or stuck at home or other obstacle to giving. There was an issue before the COVID thing hit that was also a worry for nonprofits, and that had to do with changes in tax regulations so that more people may not be itemizing their donations because they could just take a blanket deduction and not have to worry about itemizing all of the charitable gifts they may be giving here and there. How has that turned out? And are you doing an education project on that as far as donors?
Yeah, I think that, for the first part of your question, yes, there was some concern back when some of the tax law changed around that, itemized versus standardized standard deduction. The good news for us and those in the sector is we actually aren't really seeing much of a change. People still receive financial benefit from charitable giving, and the vast majority of people are going to see really, really minor changes to the financial benefits of what the tax write-off looks like on their personal taxes. The standard deduction for most people is around what itemizing used to be. It's not tremendously more for some people. It's not tremendously less for others. For those that donate a considerable amount, the itemized deduction is still their best option for obvious reasons. And you have the option to compare to see what's better. But the good news is most people are still donating despite any changes in tax law at the moment. And luckily, most people donate to nonprofits because they care about their missions and want to help their neighbors and community members. The financial incentive is certainly wonderful and certainly beneficial for many people and might push some people over the edge, but it isn't the entire reason people are giving to nonprofits. They're doing it because they really do care about those organizations in their community. As far as education, we do talk to folks that have questions. We do a lot of financial workshops for nonprofit employees in particular, and we do provide some talking points when we get some questions about how do we message to our donors about this tax code? Like, is there anything we'll help? We have some pretty standard talking points for them to work from. But luckily, like I said, we haven't seen much of an issue there.
I'm interested to hear, Kirsten. I serve on a nonprofit board, William Temple House in Northwest Portland, and looking at how our fundraising has gone over the last couple of years. In the middle of the pandemic, we used to have auctions at a hotel on a Saturday night and have big live auction item packages. Last year, we did an online auction and on Zoom, and this year we're doing a flat-out ask, a fall campaign without any sort of things you can buy. So we're kind of making a shift from transactional to philanthropic. And I just wondered, what trends are you seeing with other nonprofits? Are people doing hybrids, or what do you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that depending on where you are in the state, some organizations are coming back slowly to in-person fundraising events. I would say the majority are still doing an online campaign or an online fundraising event. It's interesting, the shift from, a lot of organizations did those galas, those dinners, those, in-person auctions, and those have a ton of benefit from, just being able to get together with people, getting donors in a room. They can be very financially fulfilling for an organization. They're also, depending on the organization and their size and their staffing capacity, they're also a ton of work. Not to say online events are any less work, but they're different work. So it is interesting to see what people are choosing to do and what organizations' choices they're making. But for now, I would say even going into this winter and even into maybe spring of 2022, you're going to still see a lot of things online. And for trends, we're seeing a lot of what you mentioned. I mean, we are seeing definitely a lot of creative online appeals, using different platforms, using different methods. I think we're seeing a little bit less mail, like physical mail, postal service mail. And I think some of that is just because people don't actually know where anybody is in the state right now. You might not be where you normally are. People aren't in their offices. They may not be at their homes. So people are doing a lot more online and a little bit less paper. We are seeing online silent auctions, similar to what you mentioned. And then I also think one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing is that just kind of flat ask, that really transparent, we just really need some help. We need support. We need, donations. We need you. And I think that many people are responding positively to that. And I think it's making people recognize that you don't always need to get something to give. And so there is less of a if you donate, you get this. That certainly works. But it also it's been nice to kind of just see these really flat asks that I think have been really successful for a lot of organizations.
Well, I think also, if I could do a quick follow-up, it kind of opens the door if it's a flat ask. I mean, not everybody can afford $150 to go to a dinner gala on a Saturday night. And so it just kind of widens the circle of people that you can invite into your nonprofit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those galas can be very expensive for people.
So it sounds like one of the key functions of your organization is actually training board members to be more effective with their particular nonprofit. If somebody wanted to find out more about what your training options are, what's your website? And then a little follow-up question, can you tell us who your largest nonprofit member is? But I sure want to hear about that website.
Yeah, so nonprofitorgan.org is our website, and you can find all of our trainings. They're great trainings for nonprofit employees, for their staff, for their volunteers, and even if you are just supporting a nonprofit and you want to learn more, there's some options for you as well, and certainly board members. There's all sorts of things on there, and I encourage you to go check it out. And our largest nonprofit organization is most likely Kaiser Permanente in the Northwest. So, people forget Kaiser is a nonprofit. Public universities, some of them are nonprofits, just depending on their designation. So there are a lot of actually very, very large nonprofits in Oregon, but I think our largest member is likely Kaiser.
Are there any nonprofits that you know of that have just had to close their doors during the pandemic that have not survived and likely won't reopen?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. I think just like every sector, for-profit, nonprofit, there has been some that have been hit really hard. There have been some that have closed. There have been some that have merged with other organizations, to partner together to be more sustainable. I think just like every nonprofit, just like everybody, or just like every organization across the board, there has been the pandemic has certainly just highlighted any issues that have already existed. So if there was an organization that was barely hanging on or struggling, or people were thinking about retiring, for example, I mean, it kind of just pushed everybody to make some tough decisions that maybe are the smartest ones overall.
Well, so looking ahead, what are the biggest challenges facing nonprofits? And we already have talked about some of them, the hybrid fundraising event, which I'm going to go to one in December. It just sounds like a lot of work, but I'm wondering what some of the other challenges are for nonprofits looking ahead into 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of challenges facing Oregon nonprofits right now. Obviously, the pandemic is not over. As we talked about, things are still virtual. People are still figuring things out, and we're all in this waiting game around when things are going to get back to like a more normal, when it is going to be safe to gather together, or if people are even going to want to do that. And so there is a little bit of continuing to be very, very flexible. Additionally, nonprofit staff and volunteers have really been on the front lines throughout the last 2 years, both in the pandemic, the wildfires, the social justice demonstrations. And I mean, quite frankly, they're just exhausted. They're very tired. Many nonprofits are understaffed, and quite frankly, many nonprofit staff is underpaid. This certainly is not a new issue in our sector, but the last 2 years has really just like highlighted and circled and underlined this problem. Like, it's not sustainable long term. So nonprofits are really also grappling with how to make some of these changes to support their staff and their volunteers that have been needing to be made for quite a while. And now it's just like a lot of them are at a breaking point where they have to make these changes or they can't go on. Donors can actually do a lot to help. Obviously, giving money is always really important and helps do things like support staff. Any donation to a nonprofit organization in your community, no matter how small, is just so helpful. And when I say no matter how small, like I really mean it. $5 to $10 a month, even $5 to $10 a quarter can add up for nonprofits, particularly really small organizations. And if you aren't able to financially contribute right now, volunteer. Find out how your time can be used to support your favorite nonprofits. This can include working shifts at places like your food bank, joining the board of directors at different nonprofits in your community, participating in a committee, and all sorts of things. Like, nonprofits always have things for volunteers to do, and they really appreciate the support. And donors can also do things like amplify a nonprofit's message and fundraising appeal to see if you can get 10 of your friends to also donate. Share their posts on social medias, talk about your favorite nonprofits with other people. That word of mouth and that free advertising and PR is always a very helpful thing for all nonprofits. And lastly, and this sounds very simple, but write a thank you note or an email to nonprofit leaders. Like I mentioned earlier, we're all very tired. And while our sector absolutely needs more support for its staff and volunteers, we always love hearing from people when they appreciate our hard work. Nonprofit employees are really dedicated to the missions of their organizations, and they truly want to help Oregonians. So hearing from individuals that we're making a difference is really wonderful and can do a lot to make people's day better.
Wow. Those were all great ideas, and it really kind of opened my eyes to the burnout issue with nonprofits. So it's wonderful to have you back on the program. And remind us again, Kirsten, the name of the organization and your website.
Sure. Our organization is the Nonprofit Association of Oregon, and our website is nonprofitoregon.org.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We've learned a lot, and we know that there's a lot of challenges ahead for so many charitable organizations, and you and your team are there to help out. So thanks for the information.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you both.
For more information, go to my website at 60andsingle.com.